What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Crush City Territory and another crossover episode, our second one of the week. As always, I'm with Tyler Stafford, but this time joined by Kyle Glaser of Friar Territory, also part of the Foul Territory Network, to preview the Astros and the red hot San Diego Padres this weekend at Daikin Park. Kyle, first of all, how are you? And second of all, how is this team doing this with like half of its lineup on the IL?
I'm doing great, Chandler. And before we dive into this year, I feel like I just need to go back to before I jumped on, I was thinking about Astros-Padres crossovers. And the ultimate one that comes to my mind was back in 2020, ALCS, Rays Astros at Petco Park. Obviously I was, a longtime writer for the Orange County Register and Baseball America. You obviously at the Chronicle and the Athletic. And remember covering that one, and it was just so surreal. You're walking through downtown San Diego, which is completely deserted. You walk into Petco Park, which is dead quiet. And then the Astros and Rays are playing an ALCS game that no one is watching or paying attention to in the city. It was just the most surreal experience ever. I felt like it was kind of like in the movie Vanilla Sky a little bit. And then again, just all of it. There's times I look back on that and it's like, did that really happen? It felt like a fever dream. It really did.
I think that series was probably the beginning of everyone thinking maybe Jose Altuve should play left field because he
5 years early.
Yeah, he did not distinguish himself at second base. Astros, you can't blame it all on Altuve, but the Astros probably lost that series because Jose Altuve just got the yips at the absolute worst time at second base. But that Rays team was really good. Like they couldn't touch Charlie Morton in games, and I believe it was game 7. They came back and forced a game 7, couldn't touch Charlie Morton.
Yep.
It was a really good Rays team, and they went to Arlington, and the Dodgers beat them in the World Series.
Yeah, it was a very entertaining series with Jose Altuve having the yips. You'll remember Yonder Diaz and Framber Valdez got into the weirdest benches clearing incident I've ever seen, where no one really knew. I think the working theory at the time was because Framber Valdez had worked with the mental skills coach who was focusing on smiling more. They thought Yandy Diaz might have taken exception to the fact that Framber was smiling big after forcing a ground out. It was just the strangest benches clearing thing of all time. And again, like you mentioned, the Rays went up 3-0. The Astros won 3 straight to force game 7. Carlos Correa had a walk-off to end it. It was a really exciting series. And I wrote something, I went back and looked at the end of game 7 that aged really poorly. We all have the stories that we write that age really well and ones that age really poorly. And after the Rays won game 7, I definitely wrote a story about how it was the changing of the guard in the American League, and the Astros run looked like it was probably coming to an end because Justin Verlander had TJ, and the Astros really struggled during that shortened season. And, there's a lot of question marks. Then, of course, the Astros reached the World Series in 2021 and 2022. So one of the things that, again, I've written some things, especially at Baseball America, predicting the future that aged really well. That was not one of them.
That's what my strategy when I wrote the player comments for the Baseball Prospectus annual was to just make them puns because those can't age badly. It's just, for Spencer Getty, I did a whole Eminem's Lose Yourself verse instead of Mom Spaghetti. I did Arrighetti, and I did a whole rap about that. I can't imagine that'll age badly.
Scott Boras is going to watch this and get on line 1, and you're going to be writing for him.
This is like the 3rd time I brought it up. I will write his zingers for him. I'm ready to go.
He's got people that members of his staff. Like, I don't think they are hired solely to write his puns, but he's got members of his staff.
I'm willing to do it.
That is something they spend like a couple days of their time doing, is getting everything ready for his GM meetings and winter meetings. Spectacular extravaganza of puns.
Yeah. Kyle, did you not consider, maybe it's already taken, but has anyone just done the podcast but spelled PAD?
Not to my knowledge.
That's pretty good.
It's not something that had jumped onto my radar, but now it has. I'll talk to the powers that be. But to answer your second question, Chandler, and to talk about present day baseball, not pandemic era baseball and puns. What the Padres are doing right now is just playing really aggressive, high energy baseball that's catching a lot of teams flat footed. You mentioned Jackson Merrill's on the IL. Jake Cronenworth is on the IL. Yu Darvish has been on the IL all season. Joe Musgrove is out for the year after having Tommy John surgery. So they're certainly missing some really, really key pieces. And of course, they lost some really good players in free agency. Jurickson Profar, who has since tested positive for PEDs, but he was a big part of their success last year. Tanner Scott, trade deadline addition. But what the Padres have done to make up for their losses is just play such an aggressive style of baseball that they're getting the most from the players they have on the field to a degree that, honestly, I haven't seen since the 2002 Angels. What you're seeing with the Padres right now is this is a team that just constantly puts pressure on the opponent. They're consistently putting balls in play. They're going first to third. They're stealing bases. They're making aggressive reads in the dirt. They're, pulling off double steals with players you wouldn't expect to be pulling off double steals. What they're doing is just applying this constant pressure on opposing defenses over and over and over and over. And eventually defenses are faltering. The Cubs are a team that should be really good defensively. You have Dansby Swanson and Nico Horner in the middle infield, PCA in center. Ian Happ's a really good left fielder. Michael Busch is an athletic first baseman.
Who's their right fielder?
The Kyle Tucker. Yes, Kyle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they were dropping balls left and right. I mean, they were totally discombobulated, and you saw them picking up, their eyes a little too soon on some ground balls because they were worried about the Padres runners. In the Cleveland series, I mean, the Padres were just putting on a clinic and putting so much pressure on the Guardians, and that's a team that normally plays really clean defense. They looked like a bad high school team defensively. I mean, by the end of the series, ground balls, fly balls, they were so flustered by the Padres just constantly running. The Padres are frankly just exhausting opposing defenses offensively with it's so kinetic. Everything's constantly in motion. And then they have an absolute lockdown bullpen to where if they have a lead after 5, the game is over. And I say that, I'm not being hyperbolic. The Padres have had one game this entire season in which their bullpen relinquished a lead. And even that it was one, Adrian Morejon came in with runners on first and third and no outs, allowed only one run, really limited the damage, but it was the tying run. So this bullpen has been locked down. Once they come in with a lead, the game is over.
Everything you just said probably scares Astros fans that are listening to this because, as Tyler and I both know, this team has allowed 24 of 25 base stealers to steal bases successfully against them. Yeah. They have 2 infielders playing their corner outfield spots right now, one of whom had one of the worst arms in baseball last year as a second baseman. This could go, if that is the case, if this is how the Padres play against the Astros, these 3 games at Daikin Park, it could get ugly pretty quick because the Astros have not demonstrated at the beginning of this season that they are good at, stopping that sort of pressure. Now, where the Astros can counteract that, they've pitched it very well to start this season. They have, they've kept guys off of base. I believe they still lead the league in strikeouts. They've got a top 5 ERA. They're missing enough bats. They're not allowing enough base runners for this to matter. But again, when you're going to go up against this offense, it's a little bit taller of a task. And Tyler, I know we've talked about it. Like, this is not the team. The Padres are probably not the team that the Astros want to go up against. Still trying to figure out, their left field and right field spots, and with their pitchers just being unable to control the running game.
I'm assuming that the coaching staff doesn't even need to give the steal signal for this series. It's just understood that if you get to first base, you're allowed to run on the Astros. The Astros cannot stop the run game at all. And the Padres just feel like you said, they're young, they're aggressive. Like, as soon as they get on, they're stealing on anybody anyway. Yeah, they're going to have 10 steals this weekend just because anytime somebody gets on, they're going.
Kyle, I've watched Wilson Contreras and Mitch Garver steal a base on the Astros in the last week and a half. It's not gonna be pretty.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Padres are doing things like having Manny Machado and Xander Bogaerts, who are 2 players on the other side of 30 who are not known for stealing bases anymore, pulling off double steals with a left-handed hitter in the box, by the way, Manny Machado stealing third. And it's not just even the stolen bases. I mentioned the Padres, constantly making contact. They don't strike out, even against really good pitching staffs. They're having a lot of success winning the battle with 2 strikes. They do something a lot of teams don't do anymore. They get into a 2-strike approach, they put the ball in play, and they force the defense to make a play. And a lot of times they've been able to, even when, the pitcher gets the ground ball, they've been able to beat it out. There's been a lot of infield singles. Fernando Tatis Jr. has a bunch this year. And you go back to the game against the Cubs on Wednesday where they clinched the series, the way they tied the game and got the lead in the 3rd inning. It was their catcher, Elias Diaz, working his way back from an 0-2 count to draw a walk. And then this big boy catcher going first to third on a single to right field. I mean, everyone is running. It's not just Tatis, it's the catchers. And then Tatis with an infield single, boom, the tying run scores. I mean, the ball barely left the infield. The Padres scored a run. Then Manny Machado singles through the left side, again on a full count, 2 outs, 2 strikes. This is what the Padres do. And I think for them right now, you take a step back. Yeah, they're second in the majors in hitting. They're 5th in stolen bases. You look at all the advanced metrics of extra bases taken, scoring from first on doubles. They're the top 5 in everything. So I do think that's a matchup that's going to be really, really big to watch. And you mentioned the Astros have a really good pitching staff with guys who can miss bats. That going up against a Padres offense that just doesn't strike out and tends to win those 2 strike counts, that's going to be really interesting to match up to me, because if the Padres can continue the success of continuing to put the ball in play and getting base runners on, I do think this is a matchup that really, really favors them, and it could get pretty ugly pretty quick.
You mentioned big boy catchers. We're going to talk about another big boy catcher that is on the San Diego Padres, and a lot of the other crossovers. There's a lot of crossovers in this series that are on this current Padres club. We're going to talk about them right after we hear from our friends at Foul Territory.
Todd Father, I love the way that modern technology has changed the way that we buy, sell, trade cards, even rip packs. They're called slab packs, and they're on Arena Club. No more shuffling through everything. The common cards are all over the place. Stuff's getting folded out and all messed up. Arena Club keeps it nice and tight in your digital showroom. And then when you want that card and you want to show it off, what do? You just let Arena Club know.
Let them know and grab it and take it with you. Show it off online. I think this is huge just because the fact that you talked about cutting the corners. You want to get a card that doesn't break or doesn't have a problem with it, go right to Arena Club. They have everything you need. Easy money right there for really, really good, exceptional cards.
After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your vault for safekeeping or trading and selling. Right now, 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/foul and use code FOUL. That's arenaclub.com/foul, code FOUL for 20% off your first purchase.
So every Astros fan's favorite topic is Martin Maldonado. And that has been the case for the last 6 or 7 years. Tyler can attest to that. He is a polarizing figure in Astros history for some reason, when he really did everything he is paid to do during his tenure with the team. But Martin Maldonado will make his return to Houston and Daikin Park this weekend with the Padres, along with Jason Hayward, who hit perhaps the biggest home run of the 2024 Astros season last year to clinch the division for them. Yep. And then Yuli Gurriel is a Padre as well, the ageless Yuli Gurriel. Kyle, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think any of these 3 guys play major roles for the Padres. Maybe they do now with everyone on the IL, but what can Astros fans expect from their old friends coming to town?
Yeah, Martin Maldonado is the guy playing the biggest role for the Padres. My memory of him with the Astros mostly was just bunting in the ALCS to kind of start the Astros rallies in 2020. That's my biggest memory of Martin Maldonado. But what's been so fascinating about Martin Maldonado, and I can't believe I'm saying the words hitting and Martin Maldonado in the same sentence, he's hitting this year. The Padres brought him in on a minor league deal because they needed a defensive catcher. Elias Diaz is more of an offensive-minded catcher. Luis Camposano is as well. They wanted someone who could really help on the defensive side, so they brought him in on a minor league deal, and he won a job in camp. Luis Camposano got demoted back down to AAA, and so far Diaz and Maldonado have kind of split the reps. And one of the things with Martin Maldonado is you always know he's going to lead pitching staffs to a lot of success. I mean, this Padres pitching staff has been utterly dominant. I mentioned the bullpen's the best bullpen in baseball with an ERA at about 1.5. But the starting rotation has been excellent as well. They just shut out the Rockies over the entire series over the weekend and held the Cubs offense, which is the top scoring offense in baseball, to 8 runs over 3 games. The starters were a big part of that. So he's done a really good job defensively. And at the bottom of the lineup, he's really embraced kind of the Padres hitting philosophy. And I mentioned they're second in the majors in average. They're not hitting a lot of home runs. It's a lot of hard line drives up the middle of the field. This team has a lot of doubles. And Martin Maldonado has just kind of adopted this short, compact swing, hit some line drives in front of the outfielders, and they're dropping. He's getting singles. He's not trying to do too much, and it's working. So he's actually been hitting over 300. I know it's early. It probably won't last the whole year, but out of those 3, he has far and away been the most valuable of the former Astros in San Diego. Defensively, And yes, offensively, no, you're not dreaming. He has actually been an offensive threat for the Padres out of the number 9 spot in the order.
The YouTube comments are going to be wild in this episode after we spent half the last episode talking about Yainer Diaz, who has looked completely lost. And then Martin Maldonado coming in with the first place Padres team leading a pitching staff. There's blood in the water for sure in the YouTube comments. But look, we could talk about this forever. Fernando Tatis is one of those guys that is just objectively fun to watch play baseball.
Yeah.
He's so good. He's so entertaining. And it seems like every year he's able to add something else to it. And just a cursory glance here. I've got Baseball Reference pulled up. So Fernando Tatis already has 1.6 WAR for the year, which is insane. Would you guys like to take a guess at what the Astros starting 9 combined WAR is?
It's not 1.6.
I'll go 0.7.
It's a hair over. They've gotten lucky on Baseball Reference, but the Astros starting 9 is 1.9. So Fernando Tatis by himself is essentially producing what the entire Astros lineup is doing. Kyle, as somebody who gets to watch him every day and not just the highlights, what makes him so special?
It's the energy he plays with. Obviously, you guys see the big home runs, on the highlight reels. You see the sliding catches, the great catches in right field, but it's what he does every single at bat. I mentioned he has started some rallies with a 2-out infield single, little nubber that 99% of guys will get thrown out on. And he reaches first base, and all of a sudden, then you have Luis Arias come up, and he singles to left, and Tatis races from first to third on a single to left, and then that sets up Manny Machado or Jackson Merrill to bring him home. So he does so many little things on top of the big exciting things, and that's really helped him become a complete player. Yes, there's the big moments, there's the big highlights, but he also does the little things that make a difference. He has a great arm in right field. He makes some game-changing throws out there, and there's really not a weakness to his game. The biggest thing for him is just he needs to stay healthy. That's something he has struggled to do really throughout his career. The only time he's played a full season was the pandemic shortened season. So as long as he can stay healthy, this is an MVP caliber player. And the biggest thing with him too, I talk about that energy he brings in every facet of the game. The Padres moved him into the leadoff spot this year. And that has completely energized the entire lineup. I talk about this team just being very kinetic, always in motion, always doing something on the base pass. He really sets the tone for that. He comes up, he gets everything started with an exciting at bat, whether it's an infield single or a leadoff home run. And you just see him racing and flying around the bases. It really sets the tone for the entire team. And, Manny Machado is not someone who has been known for hustling across his career. Manny Machado has been hustling from day one this season. I mean, it's really taken over the entire team. And it's just been a really, really good, he's been a great influential tone setter. And I think that there's a very valid argument. Manny Machado has done some things too, where you say he could be the team MVP thus far, but just the energy Tatis has brought day in and day out, every single game, every single play has really, really kind of just set the tone for the entire team this year.
There's a ton of good players on both of these teams, and we're going to see a lot of them. But if there's one thing that's kind of disappointing is the wrong word. A little bit of a letdown. You look at the pitching matchups. Hunter Brown will not pitch in this series. He's the Astros' best pitcher right now. He's probably in the top 3 young pitchers in baseball right now. The Astros will not see Randy Vasquez, who has just out of nowhere been the Padres' best starter. They will not see Nick Pivetta, who got a big deal in the offseason and has pitched very well to start. They will see Dylan Cease on Sunday Night Baseball opposite Framber Valdez. But Michael King, obviously coming over in the Soto trade last year. Kyle, he'll pitch on Saturday. Everyone saw what he did last year and how well he pitched. Can you kind of give us a little bit of a scouting report on the first 2 starters the Astros will see? That's Kyle Hart on Friday opposite Ryan Gusto, and then Michael King on Saturday.
Yeah, so Kyle Hart came over from Korea. He won the Korean Cy Young Award last year. He had briefly pitched for the Red Sox in 2020, but it was not a great outing for him. Those few starts, went over to Korea, came back, really reinvented himself, really found a sweeper that has helped him, just round out his arsenal. And the other thing I talked to him about this he actually got more confident throwing his changeup in left-on-left matchups. He was interesting. He was kind of a reverse splits guy in that he had weapons to get righties out, but against lefties, he was kind of predictable. So even though he's left-handed with a lower slot, you'd think those guys would be successful against lefties. He was actually struggling against them. He was able to figure out a changeup to throw to lefties and really help him be less predictable. You had that sweeper against righties. It's a low 90s fastball. The biggest thing with him is just his control because of his delivery and his arm slot. We saw when he pitched against the Cubs in Chicago, he kind of got wayward and couldn't get out of the first inning, walked 4 batters. But then his most recent outing against the Rockies, it was 6 innings, 1 hit, no walks. So it really just depends on his arm slot and his delivery that day. He's been really good at home, struggled in his road start. I'll be curious to see how he performs in his road start in Houston, which can be a hitter-friendly ballpark and does have some hitters who can do damage even though they're struggling. Michael King is just a stud. He had a rough start on opening day, and he had a start in Sacramento that wasn't great, but his last outing against the Rockies, complete game, 2-hit shutout. For him, look, the stuff is ridiculous. There's so much movement on his fastball. He's got a great changeup that plays off of it. He's proven himself to be durable. When he's on, this is a frontline starter who can give you consistently 7, 8 quality innings and just through his first career complete game. So these two are really, really good. I think from the Padres perspective, the pitching matchup I'm going to be most curious about is when they see Framber Valdez on Sunday. One of the things with the Padres, and again, it's early in the season, small sample, they've struggled a little bit more against left-handed starters, good left-handed starters. And the reason for that is their platoon options at the bottom of the lineup are not as good facing lefties as facing righties. And we mentioned Yuli Gurriel, he's a part of that. Again, he was a legend in Cuban baseball, was a huge, huge, huge part of the Astros for many, many years. The objective fact is he hasn't hit for 3 years. The Padres brought him in on a minor league deal to be a right-handed first base DH type to give them sort of a platoon option against lefties. Look, he's 41. It's just not there anymore. I mean, that's kind of the hard truth. He had an RBI single against the Braves the opening weekend that, proved to be a game winner, had a double against Sacramento, but there's not really any quality contact. It's just, the Padres have some issues in the bottom of their lineup against lefties, and just in terms of the options they can roll out there. And frankly, Yuli Gurriel is one of those guys who is part of that issue.
What a life you're living where
Right.
your biggest problem is the bottom of your lineup, the platoon against left. Get out of here. All right. I don't want to hear your whining on this show about how hard your life is watching Yuli Gurriel hit 115. I think Yiner's hitting 115 right now. So I don't want to hear it, Kyle.
Yeah. But no, you're right. I mean, these are good problems to have. This is a sign of a 15-4 team that, everything's went. The starting pitching is rolling. The bullpen is rolling. The team's playing, for the most part, really good defense. Base running's been exceptional. And their offense has been really good as well. I mentioned they're, second in the majors in hitting. They're top 10 in run score. They're top 5 in OPS. I mean, Tatis, Machado, they've been at the forefront of it. They've gotten production to bottom the lineup. Guys like Gavin Sheets have been really, really big for them. He's reinvented himself after coming over from Chicago. Mentioned Martin Maldonado's hitting. Who would have thunk? So they are getting production to the bottom half. It's just when they have to go against lefties instead of Gavin Sheets and Jason Hayward, who isn't putting up big numbers, but we're starting to see him hit the ball a little bit better. And they have to go instead with Yuli Gurriel and Brandon Lockridge in the outfield and DH spots. It takes away from the offensive thump a little bit. So that's why. But again, all things being equal, the Padres are in a really, really, really good spot. And I mean, for you guys, when you look at the Padres pitchers, I'm curious, given the state of the Astros lineup, how do you guys see the matchup?
Kyle, you could pitch against the Astros lineup right now. It doesn't matter who's throwing. There is no juicy matchup coming up for there's nothing right now. So there's not a lot of that scouting at the moment.
If you're looking for something, this is an extremely right-handed Astros team. The only true left-handed hitter on their 26-man roster is Yordan Alvarez, who is basically platoon neutral because he hits left-handed pitching just as well as he hits right-handed pitching. Yeah. If you want to look for a sliver of hope, Kyle Hart is a left-handed pitcher. He is going to pitch on Friday. Pitching against 8 right-handed hitters in Yordan Alvarez, maybe that's what they need to get going. You just said Kyle Hart has not had the greatest start to his season. maybe that's what they need to get going. But then you look on the other side, and the guy they'll be sending to the mound is Ryan Gusto, who's making his second major league start. Let's give Ryan Gusto credit. He has pitched well this season as their long man. He's filling in for Spencer Arrighetti. This is Spencer Arrighetti's rotation spot. Spencer Arrighetti had the unfortunate injury in BP in Seattle last week. This is his spot. Ryan Gusto, he's going to throw strikes. He's not going to be scared. He's going to throw strikes. It's just you throw strikes against this lineup, like you said, they're going to put the ball in play. And I doubt in AAA Sugarland he ever had to worry about holding runners as much as he'll have to worry about holding the Padres runners. He won't. It's going to be I think Friday could be a pretty high scoring affair, and that's not something we've said a lot about the Astros this season. And then the next two games, I mean, look, you're getting Michael King and Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease freshly shaved Dylan Cease, so maybe it'll be better. But Dylan Cease just tied them in knots last year at Petco Park. Took a perfect game, I think, into the seventh inning. So they have not hit him well. Michael King's been pitching well. Like we said, the Astros aren't going to pitch Hunter Brown. Framber Valdez is going Sunday. You said that the Padres, if anything, that's where they're vulnerable against left-handed pitching. Framber has not been typical Framber the first four starts of the year. His sinker is allowing a 38% line drive rate, which means he's not getting the sinker down. He's not commanding the sinker. It's not down in the zone. And his first three starts of the year, his curveball was so unhittable that he could get away with not having his sinker. Hung a couple breaking balls against the Cardinals. They hit the crap out of him. He gave up a career worst 5 extra base hits in that game. So they need to get him. The sinker needs to be down in the zone. He needs to command the curveball better. And look, I hate to keep bringing up Maldonado, but if there's anyone that knows Framber Valdez best, it's Martin Maldonado, a guy that caught him for a while. I guarantee you Maldonado is going to have that Padres team prepared for not only Framber, but for this whole series.
Is there like an all-time catcher rule that maybe Maldonado could just stay out there?
It's all 3 night games. If I was Mike Schilt, I would catch him all 3 games. Because you would and this isn't breaking news. This happens a lot. Just when a longtime teammate goes to another place, like they bring trade secrets. I guarantee you that the Astros are paranoid's probably the wrong word, but they are probably on heightened concern about what Martin Maldonado has shared with the Padres going into this year. So if I'm Mike Schilt, I start Martin Maldonado all 3 games, and they're all night games, so he probably could.
Yeah, potentially. And I think too, going back to when you stack up the 3 games in this series and that edge, Kyle Hart and the Padres have pitched extremely well at home. The Padres have a 1.3 ERA at home. That's a big reason why they're 12-1 this year at Petco Park. But they are 3-3 on the road. Again, small sample. We're talking about 6 games, but they have been a little more hittable on the road. And so that's where, again, I think that Friday matchup, seeing which version of Kyle Hart comes out, the home version of Kyle Hart, which has been really good, or the road version of Kyle Hart, which struggled. I do think the Sunday matchup is interesting. You mentioned Framber Valdez has not pitched well. Dylan Cease has actually not pitched very well either this year. His ERA is over 6, and he's been very, very hittable. You talk about not getting the ball down. He's been getting a lot of the plate, thigh high and above. He's had a lot of outings where you look up and look against the A's in Sacramento. He went 4 innings, 9 hits, 9 runs. It was tied for the most runs he's allowed in a game in his career. And even his most recent start against the Cubs, 5 2/3, 7 innings, 3 runs, 2 earned. You say 5 2/3 innings, 2 earned runs allowed. Certainly not a bad outing, but he had to work his way out of a lot of jams. Those 7 hits allowed. He's been very hittable this year. So I think that's going to be an interesting matchup to watch too, the Sunday game. As weird as it sounds, you never can pick individual baseball games, but the Michael King Saturday game, honestly, if you're the Padres, you feel pretty good about that one. To me, it's the Friday game where it's, okay, which version of Kyle Hart are we going to get? Then the Sunday game, which, Dylan Cease and Framber Valdez, 2 guys who are aces at their best, who haven't been pitching their best, which one can kind of get the edge? And again, if the Astros are going to win games in this series, it's going to have to come against the starters, because once the Padres get that A bullpen in there of Adrian Morejon, Jeremiah Estrada, Jason Adam, Robert Suarez, again, game is over. And like I said earlier, I wasn't being hyperbolic. They literally have relinquished a lead 1 time this year, and even that was an inherited runner situation where they limited the damage.
All right, Kyle, I think we've broken down this series as much as we can. I want to take you back to your past life covering prospects for Baseball America, but we'll do that right after a message from our friends at Foul Territory.
FT fam, you got to check out HelloFresh. I know AJ's favorite part of HelloFresh. They've got the 15-minute meals, 3 steps, and you've got your dinner.
I love it. I love it. It comes fresh to your house.
Mm-hmm.
It's pre-packaged with all the ingredients in almost a brown bag. Comes with all the instructions. And what I like most about it is some people say, I don't like to cook. I like to actually chop the ingredients, cook them up. That way it makes it feel like, even though it was pre-packaged, you feel like you're doing something. And it's so fresh. Fresh vegetables, fresh meat, high quality. Comes with all the sauces, comes with all the spices you need.
Yes, and if you're like, hey, you guys talk about Green Chef, that's right. They're in the same fam. Both bring different strengths to the table. So check out HelloFresh, of course, and get yourself up to 10 free meals and a free high protein item for life at HelloFresh.com/FT10FM. 1 item per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only, varies by plan. That's up to 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/FT10FM.
All right, Kyle, you're new here, so we'll let you in on a little secret. We are contractually obligated on every episode of Crush City Territory to mention Cam Smith. And so we are going to mention Cam Smith, and I want to get your insight on maybe a more broad question about Cam Smith. You know, so as I said, in your past life, you covered prospects for Baseball America. You were very, very good at it, writing up. I think you did the Astros top 30 a couple times as well. You know, you know this stuff. You know kind of how this works. A lot was made of, obviously, for good reason, Cam Smith making the major league roster after 134 professional plate appearances. Yeah. I wonder if that is like becoming maybe a more of a normal thing. Maybe not that, but like, hear me out a little bit. Like,
no, you're right. It's becoming more common for sure.
Wyatt Langford barely played in the minor leagues before the Rangers called him up. Zach Neto and Nolan Shonwell. I mean, look, the Angels aren't playing for much, but look, they rushed them up. There was thought that Christian Moore would be on that track until he started off slow this year. Look, what Cam Smith did was just a complete, almost without precedent situation. But I guess I'm wondering, because of how good college baseball is now, and because of the money being poured in and the amount of talent at the high major level, you talk all 4 of those guys we mentioned played at the high major college level. Is this going to be more precedented, that we're going to see more things like Cam Smith or guys of that ilk making major league teams after very, very short times in the minor leagues?
It has certainly become more common in recent years, and I think it is a trend that will at least stay steady. I don't know how much it will accelerate, because a lot of it will depend on how these guys perform. Nolan Shonwell was not physically strong enough to be playing first base in the major leagues and hit like a first baseman, so that wasn't great. Zach Neto's been talented, but he also could have used some more physical development in the minors. We've seen some other guys get rushed up and really struggle. Matt Shaw with the Cubs is another example this year. Cam Smith obviously had a great camp, but it's been a little bit of a slower start offensively. And as you mentioned, there's been some defensive issues. The reason this has happened is twofold. First and foremost, as you mentioned, the top conferences in college baseball have become more professionalized. What I mean by that is they're bringing in a lot of ex-major league coaches, because frankly, a lot of the colleges pay better than some of the supporting role staffs on major league sides. And then you also have a situation where more technology, more facilities are coming in. I mean, a lot of the top colleges, their facilities blow away most teams' minor league facilities right now, a lot of these minor league parks. So that's part of it. But the biggest reason why we're seeing this was the reorganization of the minor leagues that Major League Baseball did back. It was originally scheduled for 2020 and became 2021 with the pandemic. When Major League Baseball got rid of the short season leagues above rookie ball, what that did was it made a lot of players who previously were short season caliber guys going straight to low A. So the caliber of baseball in low A dropped. And then high A baseball became what low A used to be. So the class A levels, the quality of baseball dropped precipitously to a point where honestly it was almost unwatchable. And so with that, you take a lot of teams now taking these advanced college hitters and saying they don't have anything to learn at the class A levels, which didn't used to be the case. It used to be the case these guys still have things to learn at the high A level. They really don't anymore, because low A and high A, the quality has just gotten so bad post reorganization. They're sending these guys to double A very, very, very quickly. And once you're at double A, you're in striking distance of the majors. It becomes very easy for a team to say, oh, well, he's hitting great at double A and we have a spot. Sometimes we'll, give him, I mean, you see guys getting like 10 games in triple A. Sometimes, 30 or 40 getting pulled up, but sometimes they're pulling them straight up. So it's a combination of factors. Yes, college baseball has gotten better and more professionalized, but the quality of the minors at the same time, the low minors has gotten worse. And again, teams are saying, hey, we'll move them up quicker because they have nothing to learn in A-ball. And like I said, once you're in AA, all of a sudden you become a real candidate to get promoted to the majors. And sometimes teams are pulling the trigger pretty quickly now.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Caglione is hitting 900 somewhere and hitting 140-mile-an-hour moonshots off people. So, yeah, I mean, again, we talked about it a little on this podcast, but look, if I'm a top 5 round talent coming out of high school, unless I'm going, top 10 overall, I'm going to college. Like, they're going to be able to pay me relatively close to what I would have, once you get further down the line.
Yeah.
And even if you're a top level guy, unless you're Bryce Harper, you're not debuting before you're the same age as you would have been draft eligible as a college kid anyway. So you might as well go to college, and you're still going to get paid. You're going to be on, you're going to have better resources. I mean, shoot, you get to take planes to other teams, and you don't get to do that in the minor leagues. So, I mean, again, I know it's all personal preference, but I think you're going to see more of that in the coming years.
We already have started seeing it where teams now pretty much only take high school guys up through about the 3rd round, which is where you'll get those 7-figure bonuses. After that, most teams are just
Why
going
would
to
you?
college
Yeah.
guys, 4th through 20th. Occasionally you get an overslot guy in the 11th or 12th round, or a high school kid who maybe just doesn't have the grades to go to school but has some talent. He'll go in the 7th round and take a couple $100,000. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the facilities college baseball has to offer, and I'm not just talking about the facilities in terms of on the field and the weight room, where players are sleeping, the dorms that are now available at, LSU and Arizona State, my alma mater, all these places are way nicer than where players are living and sleeping when they're in, Kinston, North Carolina. You talk about, the nutrition they get from the meals and the dining halls is way better than the food they're getting, on minor league road trips. So from a developmental standpoint, if you're a player and say, I can get better field conditions, better food, better living conditions, better support staff, better weight training, better everything. And, oh, by the way, I can make some money now going to college than I will in the minor leagues. It makes sense to go to college and then be prepared to spend as little time in the minor leagues as possible. I mean, the hard truth is, even with all the improvements Major League Baseball has made to facility standards and living situations, the minor leagues, that life is still a rough one. It's not fun for anyone. And so if you can have a better 3 years in college than you would in the minor leagues and develop every bit as much, and then when you do get drafted, be in a better position to spend as little time in the minor leagues as possible, yeah, college starts looking way, way, way more appealing.
So, Kyle, we talked a little bit about this before we started, but you and I both have a little bit of experience in the minor leagues. You have a lot more than I do, but I worked for the Hooks in 2015. I was the Carlos Correa, Lance McCullers, Josh Hader, Joe Musgrove. So actually, next time you see Musgrove, if you can let him know, he was the best ping pong player on the team, but I was the ringer that they brought in to just so I wiped the floor with him. So if you could bring that up for me, I would appreciate it. But you worked in Lancaster when that was or you covered Lancaster, right? So when they were the Astros affiliate, what did Jose Altuve look like as a 19-year-old playing big? Can you just tell me a story about him playing
I can tell you
A-ball?
many. So my very first job out of college, I worked for the Victorville Daily Press, a small daily newspaper in Victorville, California. My first job, I was the beat writer for the High Desert Mavericks, who were the Mariners affiliate at the time in the Cal League. And they played Lancaster, I swear it felt like 30 times a year. So my first year was 2011, which was when Jose Altuve was there. And I remember watching him, and right away I was like, this guy's the best player in the league. I mean, absolutely hitting everything, missiles to all fields, twitch, speed. I was like, this guy's going to hit 300 with 30 steals a year. And his best years, he might hit 330 with 40 stolen bases a year. I mean, this was very clearly, to me, the best player in the league. And it was so funny because I'd be talking to scouts. They'd be like, we can't play short. And, no one looks like this. So he's not a utility man. So what is he? I'm like, he's a starting second baseman who wins you batting titles. I mean, this guy was just so head and shoulders above in terms of his hitting ability. And yes, it was Lancaster, but you just watched the quality of contact, the consistency of contact. And again, he was just such an energizing, explosive player. I think that's the thing about young Jose Altuve is he could run. I mean, he was whip quick. He was super fast. At second base, he actually had plenty of range because he was just so darn quick. He could get to everything, and he was just a really, really good player. I did not see 30 home runs a season coming, which he eventually did at his peak, but batting champion with, stealing 30 bags and being one of the best leadoff hitters in baseball at his peak, I did see that. I will say, so I mentioned I got, the Astros future post 2020 wrong. I'm very proud I got Jose Altuve right. But the other guy that will always stick out in my memory, and we can talk about this, is another Astros-Padres crossover. George Springer, when he came through in 2012, he remains probably the best prospect I ever saw, along with Ronald Acuna Jr. George Springer was one of those players, you talk about prospects, there's guys like, yeah, this guy's just not very good. And then there's guys who honestly just kind of there. There's guys like, hey, it's a pretty good ball player. Then there's those holy expletive guys. The guys you go like, holy, expletive. Like, this guy's unreal. That was George Springer. Even though there were some strikeouts, I mean, the power, the speed is like, this guy's a 30-30 everyday center fielder, franchise caliber player. And you'll remember he was unbelievable at Lancaster, and he continued when he went up to Corpus Christi. There was no doubt in my mind this guy was going to be a superstar, which he was in his prime. But you'll remember the Astros took him 11th in the 2011 draft. The Padres had one pick before. They picked Corey Spangenberg. And Corey Spangenberg was on Lake Elsinore at that time. So, Lake Elsinore would come up to High Desert, Lancaster come up to High Desert. I remember sitting and watching Corey Spangenberg for Lake Elsinore and then watching George Springer for Lancaster. And I was like, whoever picked Spangenberg over Springer should be fired on the spot. How does this happen? It was just not even close. Like, didn't need to be a scout. I mean, you want to talk about the 20 to 80 scale. Corey Spangenberg from the outset was a 45 grade player, second division, second baseman, made some contact, fine, whatever. Where George Springer was clearly a 65 to 70 grade player, like franchise caliber stud. I mean, that was when the Padres, that was the era where they picked Donovan Tate, who I maintain is the worst high first round pick I've ever seen. Had no baseball ability whatsoever. Raw athlete who did not know what he was doing on a baseball field. Followed by Spangenberg over Springer. I was just like, whoever was responsible for those picks should have been fired on the spot. It was unbelievable how you make those decisions. Spangenberg over Springer to me will always be the most inexplicable thing I've ever seen in my career.
And the Astros reap the benefits. The one thing about Altuve that I don't think he gets, I mean, he gets a lot of credit for a lot of things. The one thing I don't think people appreciate about him is like how much he transformed his body. And maybe you can speak to this. Like, I mean, and Tyler, you remember when he came up, like, I'm not sitting here saying he was fat, but he certainly wasn't like, I mean, there are people, I mean, to this day that say he is still pound for pound the strongest person in the Astros clubhouse. And if you look at him, I mean, we've had to see his shirt off a couple times. If you look at him,
not every time, Chandler,
not every time, but sometimes, he is really like, he is built like he is a big, small guy. That was not the case, Kyle, when you saw him, and then Tyler when he came up to make his debut. I mean, he was, again, not fat, but he certainly didn't have the muscle, certainly didn't look maybe the part. And maybe Kyle, that dovetailed into why scouts were uneasy about him. Because when you look at maybe his first year, look at some of the at-bats, some of the games he played in 2011, 2012 when he came up, like, he doesn't look like the Jose Altuve that you see out there now.
No, and when I saw him in Lancaster again, he was still pretty young, 19, 20, so he wasn't thick yet. I know there's times where he maybe got a little thick, and some of the scouting reports comped him to a fire hydrant as a body comp. I did see that in one scouting report. I did not do that. But, so at the time, I saw him, he was just a smaller guy, but he was so whip quick in his wrists, and like I said, he stole bases. He was just very, very quick. So you saw the athleticism, you saw some of that explosiveness, and that's why I was bought in on it. But yeah, there's no question. He's absolutely a guy who, did not physically develop until a little bit later. But again, very few guys at 19, 20 are physically developed. You have to remember that in A-ball. But I think just because he was so short, a lot of scouts didn't think there was any projection there. You hear that a lot. Oh, there's no projection. But the truth is everyone can get stronger. I mean, no 19-year-old is the strongest they're ever going to be. And, as you mentioned, as he came up and got into a major league weights routine and understood what he needed to do, he did get stronger. And that's where, 30 home runs came from. I thought he was going to be 300, a lot of steals, but, probably be more, 30 doubles, 10 triples, 10 to 15 home runs. Just from the quality of contact he was making. For him to transform himself into a guy who was capable of hitting 30 home runs, even in Houston with the short porch, really is a testament to him putting in the work to get stronger. And, we talk so much about guys and that physical projection, but just maximizing the frame you have is huge. We see it, Mookie Betts is a guy who did it. There's so many smaller guys. If you maximize the frame you have, you're going to be more than fine.
Chandler, this is a fun crossover here. So I've got the 2011 Lancaster roster pulled up. There are 2 future Astros in addition to Jose Altuve who are on that roster. Okay. I will give you one. One of them was Jonathan VR, who also was an insanely fast. I'll never forget him coming up in like the first weekend he played for the Astros. He stole home. I was like, okay, that's what we're doing. The other guy you have met and spoken with quite frequently. Do you have any guess what other Astros prospect was on that team?
Is he still in baseball?
Still in baseball.
Is he still on the Astros? He's not still on the Astros.
Not still on the Astros, but played very recently for the Astros.
Marlin? No.
John Singleton.
Oh, man.
John Singleton was also on that team.
The next year's team, look at the 2012 team. That was a loaded team. That
my
was
gosh.
Springer,
Domingo
Mike
Santana,
Fultonevich.
right? Yeah.
Domingo, Mike Fultonevich. And the guy who, I talk about in A-ball, the guys who are going to make it out of A-ball reveal themselves pretty quickly. If you have to talk yourself into a guy at A-ball, it's not happening. The one exception to that rule was on that 2012 Astros team. Kike Hernandez. He was hitting the bottom of the order in A-ball for that Astros team. He said in 8th or 9th. He was a, bottom of the order utility guy in A-ball. There was so much talent on that team. He was not a guy who got put in that bucket, and he has turned himself into a really, really successful big leaguer. That's the one guy that's, you have all these generic rules in scouting and player development, and that's a big one. In A-ball, the future big leaguers reveal themselves very, very, very quickly. There's always an exception, and he is the ultimate exception to me. A guy hitting the list of guys who have hit 8th or 9th in A-ball orders that have made the majors, you could probably count them on 2 hands, and he's one of them.
I got you one better. When I was on the hooks, maybe the worst player on the team was Teoscar Hernandez. He was so bad for the hooks that year. It took me like 3 years of him in the big leagues for me to be like, I guess this guy's good. Like, I don't know what happened, but the year I saw him, not at all. So it's interesting how that works out. But
the other guy, talk about bad first round picks. Donovan Tate will forever be my worst first round pick. The other guy who's on that list for me, and I feel bad because this was a nice guy, was Gio Meyer. Another Astros.
Yeah, he was on the hooks when I was there.
I watched
a sweet Mercedes that he drove from.
Yeah, again, nice guy.
Perks of being a first round pick.
Yeah.
Nice guy. Played hard, but it was very
nice.
clear in A-ball that this is an organizational infielder. Like that's what he is, and you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, he got replaced by a guy named Carlos Correa on the hooks whenever I was there. So that checks out.
Guy. I saw him playing short Lancaster. I was not in Victorville anymore at that point, but
that's when he broke his leg, right?
He did that year, but I saw him before that. Just the way he moved, I was like, yeah, don't have to think too hard about this one. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Well, we will see. We will not see any of those people we just talked about. We will
see Altuve.
We will see Jose Altuve. Because Jose Altuve, as we've talked about, has defied doubters his whole career. He's defied doubters his whole life. Maybe he will defy doubters this weekend and get the Astros to a series win that doesn't look very promising. But who knows? It's baseball. That's why they play the game. Kyle, this was great. We really appreciate you giving us some insight on the Padres and on farm systems of the past and on, everything that has to do with kind of how the Padres are constructed and how the Padres are going to come into this weekend at Daikin Park. Please follow Kyle on Twitter. Follow Friar Territory. You can subscribe to their YouTube channel. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can get alerted whenever we go live. Please give us a rate and review on Apple. And we will come back to you guys after this weekend with a recap of the Padres series and see what's happening going forward. For those that celebrate, have a happy Easter. Have a nice weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.